Hello there. Those MPs have just shown us that none of them deserve one more penny of our money or one more second of our time. They must all go, now. Our Parliament has been torn asunder by a bunch of selfish virtue signalling over a war in a foreign land over which they have zero control. And it's been pointed out by many there were more MPs in the Commons arguing about the Gaza border last night than attended the debates on the UK border. And while they were fighting over that virtue signalling bone, they allowed one of the parties, Keir Starmer's Labour Party, to sneak in and run off with that bone. Don't believe me? Well, here's what they've been proudly displaying on Twitter. Just look at it. Parliament just passed Labour's call for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire. Is that really what Parliament believes? And Labour activists will be phoning all their mates from a preferred demographic, telling them that the Labour Party has their backs. Sickening. And Labourlist has published the names of all the Labour MPs who signed the parliamentary amendment that ended up causing that call for a ceasefire to be passed by our MPs. For reasons, in my opinion, that will become apparent as I continue. And there are stories and rumours circulating about of the Labour Party bullying the Speaker of the House into this mess or getting him to act as he did in order to stop Labour MPs being harassed or worse by a certain demographic. But all the Westminster blob press is concentrating on is the internal party bickering. I don't care about their bickering, I care about the damage this does to our democratic processes. Do they really think that the public wants this outcome? And if I was really cynical, I would think that this whole charade was a setup to get that motion passed to try and stop violence from a certain demographic. Just look at previous headlines about Labour MPs fearing for their safety after certain protest activists targeted their offices. Then there's the targeting of the home of Tory MP Tobias Ellwood. All emanating from one political interest base. There were even reports of MPs being afraid to leave the Commons after last night's debacle because of a potentially hostile crowd that had been allowed to gather outside during the day. And I wonder how many MPs were too scared to go past that mob to get into Parliament in the first place. And all of it originating from something we're never allowed to directly address for fear of offending and for fear of a knock on the door from the virtue signalling plod. And how did this humiliating debacle of more bowing and scraping to a certain demographic start? By the Speaker of the House of Commons, Lindsay Hoyle, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, deciding to rip up the Commons procedural rulebook, emulating that well-known John Bercow, by putting forward the Labour Party amendment to the SNP motion that called for a Gaza ceasefire for a vote. During the SNP's opposition day in the Commons, something that is not normally allowed. It was SNP day in Parliament, and Labour have their own opposition days to table their own motions. So why did they table this amendment if it would not normally be accepted? Hoyle broke the rules and was warned by his staff that allowing the Labour amendment represents a departure from the long-established convention for dealing with such amendments on opposition days. And that convention was there for a reason, as illustrated by the ensuing mess. As the government then withdrew its own amendment, and a government amendment is allowed, by the way, on the opposition days, and the Tory and SNP MPs left the chamber in disgust. Now, why didn't Keir Starmer then do the honourable thing and withdraw that Labour amendment, or ask his party to abstain on the vote? And no one's asking that question. And it just got worse and worse, with the Deputy Speaker, Dame Rosie Winterton, not covering herself in glory either, and that's another procedural shambles. In the end, the motion, including the Labour amendment, was passed without a vote. An important point that it was without a vote, because Parliament was able to pass a Gaza ceasefire motion without recording who voted for and who voted against. Virtue signalling achieved, without putting the lives of MPs in more danger, because there's no record of those who might have voted against it. See why I think it might have been engineered? Forget the cost of living crisis, forget the open borders, forget the homeless, forget every single domestic issue, and concentrate solely on matters far away. Because we have so many fervent people from far away in this country to now appease. Many non-integrated newcomers, to be precise, aided and abetted by useful idiots. And now aided and abetted by a compliant establishment, an establishment that is now terrified of the very people their lax, woke policies gave power to. And the upshot is that the Labour Party was able to steal the SNP opposition day and parade in glory before their now preferred demographic. Not one life in Gaza or Israel has been saved or even affected by this, not one. But there will be many Jews waking up and wondering how much further this will go, and if life in the UK is tenable for them anymore. And now we have some of those MPs who would have voted for a ceasefire motion, complaining that although they got that motion through, there's no formal record of their support for a ceasefire. They obviously want something they can show the world for some reason. Why should that matter if the only concern is the lives of those in Gaza and getting that motion through? But I don't see those who would have voted against it complaining too much. I wonder why. Think about that for a moment. And the propaganda coup this represents for Hamas, this really boils my... Look, even the UK is behind our terrorism, they'll be crowing in Gaza. And now we have some MP saying how brave it was of the Speaker, who I gather had a cold, to come back into the floor of the Commons and apologise.
And I've got to say, I regret how it's ended up. It was not my intention. I wanted all to ensure they could express their views and all sides of the House could vote. As it was, in particular, the SNP were ultimately unable to vote on their proposition. I am, and I regret, with my sadness that it's ended up on like that, in this position. That was never my intention for it to end up like this. I was absolutely convinced that the decision was done with the right intentions. I recognise the strength of feeling of members on this issue. Clear today has not shown the House at its best. I will reflect on my part in that of the course I recommit myself to ensuring that all members of this House are treated fairly. I do not want it to have ended like this. I want to say to the House, I will meet with all the key players of each party. I think it is right that I meet with each one, and that... Can I just put that correct? I've never met with Sue Gray today. I didn't bump into her today. I'm offended by that comment. I think you'd like to withdraw it. Yeah, because that is the danger that we've ended up with this House in speculation of not what is fact and not factual. I am honest to this House, I am true to this House, I believe in all members of this House, and I have tried to do what I thought was the right thing for all sides of this House. It is regrettable, and I apologise for a decision that didn't end up in the place that I wished for. So I would say no. I will meet with all the... Just be quiet, please. I will meet with the leaders and with the chief whips, and let us have a discussion on what is the best way forward to try and ensure that, and I say again, I thought I was doing the right thing and the best thing, and I regret it and I apologise for how it's ended up. I do take responsibility for my actions, and that's why I want to meet. And that's why I want to meet with the key players who have been involved.
All well and good, but if I were an MP, I'd be tabling a vote of no confidence in him and his team today. And the SNP who came back into the chamber after the Labour motion had been accepted were not impressed.
Mr. Speaker, whilst I acknowledge your apology, the reality is that you were warned by the clerks of the House that your decision could lead to the SNP not having a vote on our very own Opposition Day. As a result, we have seen the SNP Opposition Day turn into a Labour Party Opposition Day. I'm afraid that is treating myself and my colleagues in the Scottish National Party with complete and utter contempt. And I will take significant convincing that your position is not now intolerable.
To respond to that, and quite rightly, I understand the feeling. As I said, I would like to have that conversation in private. I would like to meet with you as soon as possible.
I cannot express the loathing I have for the lot of them and this now corrupted system they infest, and how, with their useless, weak, wet wokeness, they've allowed our democracy to be stolen from under their noses. So what do you think of them? Please like, subscribe and comment below.